The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor. Sarah Elizabeth Montgomery stood in the bride's preparation room, her hands trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace on her grandmother's wedding dress. The silk felt cool against her skin, and the pearl buttons ran like tiny teardrops down her back. She had dreamed of this day since she was 7 years old, playing dress-up in her mother's closet. Now, at 28, that dream felt fragile as morning mist. "Of course I'm sure," he had said, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. "Just the practical matter of deposits and contracts." "We've been planning this for 2 years, Sarah. Everything's already paid for." Through the narrow window, she could see guests arriving in their finest clothes, chatting quietly as they found their seats in the wooden pews. Her maid of honor, Jessica, bustled around the small room, arranging the train of Sarah's dress and checking the flower arrangements one final time. "Sarah, it's time," Jessica whispered, her voice gentle but urgent. The priest's face was pale, and he kept glancing toward the side door of the church. The white roses and baby's breath filled the air with their sweet perfume, but Sarah barely noticed. Sarah whispered to her father, though she feared she already knew the answer. A murmur began to ripple through the congregation, quiet at first, then growing louder as the seconds stretched on. As the CEO of Ashford Industries, he could have been arrogant, but instead he was humble. He remembered the names of every employee's children and sent flowers when someone was sick. David Ashford moved with quiet confidence, his tall frame commanding attention even in this moment of chaos. Where Marcus was fair-haired and slight, David was dark and solid, with the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. The woman staring back at her looked beautiful, but her eyes held a sadness that no amount of makeup could hide. Around them, the whispers grew louder, but David's presence seemed to create a bubble of calm in the storm. "Sarah, I know this is crazy. I know the timing is impossible. But I can't let you stand here like this, not when—" Her father waited at the entrance to the sanctuary, handsome in his black tuxedo, his arm extended to escort her down the aisle. His dark eyes were gentle but serious as he approached. The cathedral seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in their own private world. Through the open doors, she could see the assembled guests, all turned in their seats, waiting for her entrance. Sarah looked into David's face, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. True love, deep, patient, unwavering love. 2 years of planning, of dreaming, of building a life together, gone in an instant, right here, right now. Not because it's convenient or because everything's paid for, but because I love you. Jessica stood at the altar steps, clutching her bouquet and nodding encouragingly. Even Father Williams was smiling, his earlier worry replaced with something like joy. This man who had stepped in to save her from humiliation but was offering her so much more than rescue. He was offering her a partnership built on genuine affection and respect. The time he stayed up all night helping her prepare for her graduate school presentation while Marcus slept. The gentle way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. She was focused on David's face, on the pure joy that transformed his features, on the way he gently took her hands in his. "Because I've loved you quietly and completely, and because I hope that maybe you could love me too." Sometimes they begin with heartbreak and surprise, with courage and unexpected choices. Sometimes they begin when one person loves another enough to risk everything in a single, beautiful moment. The humiliation washed over her in waves, but beneath it was something else. Relief, a small, quiet relief that she barely dared acknowledge. She picked up her bouquet of white orchids and took a deep breath. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation she'd had with Marcus just 2 nights ago. "Are you sure about this?" She had asked him as they sat on his apartment balcony, the city lights twinkling below them like scattered diamonds. But sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. Sometimes love finds a way even when we think all is lost. Marcus had been distant for weeks, his usual warmth replaced by something cold and unreachable. He said he couldn't go through with it, that he realized he wasn't ready for marriage. Those words echoed in her mind now. Everything's already paid for. Not, "I love you," or "I can't wait to start our life together." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Sarah took one last look in the full-length mirror. The walk down the cathedral's long corridor felt endless. But something was wrong. The altar, which should have held Marcus in his charcoal gray suit, stood empty except for Father Williams in his ceremonial robes. Sarah's steps slowed. Her father squeezed her arm gently, but she could feel his confusion too. "Where is he?" Before her father could respond, the side door of the cathedral opened. But instead of Marcus, his older brother David stepped through. Sarah had always admired David from a distance. He was everything Marcus wasn't: successful beyond measure, thoughtful in his words, and genuinely kind to everyone he met. David walked straight to Sarah, ignoring the whispers and stares of the guests. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed cathedral, "Marcus isn't coming." The words hit her like a physical blow, but somehow she remained standing. "He left this morning," David continued, his voice steady and kind. Sarah felt the orchids trembling in her hands. David stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear his next words. He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "Not when I've spent 2 years watching my brother prepare to marry the woman I've been in love with since the day he brought you home." Sarah's breath caught. "What are you saying?" she whispered. David's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something she had never seen in Marcus's gaze. "Marry me," he said simply. The cathedral fell completely silent. Even the whispers stopped as the guests strained to hear what was happening at the altar. All those moments suddenly made sense. The way he always asked about her day when Marcus was distracted. How he remembered her favorite coffee order. "David," she breathed, her heart racing. "I know it's sudden," he said, his voice growing stronger. "I know it's not traditional." Sarah looked out at the congregation. Her parents sat in the front row, her mother's face wet with tears but her eyes bright with hope. These people hadn't come just for a wedding. They had come to witness love, real, true love. Sarah turned back to David, this man who had quietly loved her while asking for nothing in return. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Yes, David, I'll marry you." The cathedral erupted in cheers and applause. But Sarah barely heard it. Father William stepped forward, beaming. "Well then," he said, his voice carrying over the celebration, "let's have a wedding." As they spoke their vows, Sarah realized that sometimes the best love stories don't go according to plan. And sometimes the love really does find a way.